Hello, I'm Lisa Marotta, and welcome to Civic Matters. Civic Matters isn't about telling you what to think. It's about giving all of us more information with which to think. Today, we're beginning with an issue generating considerable conversation across Connecticut: red light and speed detection cameras. We all want safer roads. The more complicated question is how we get there and how communities balance public safety with enforcement, privacy, fairness, fiscal responsibility, and public trust. The conversation has become even more timely as state leaders call for additional review of camera policies and privacy protections. We will keep that developing context in mind today while focusing specifically on automated traffic enforcement. To help us better understand these issues, I'm joined by two guests who bring different and complementary perspectives to the conversation. Joining us today is Tony Gennaro, a retired Middletown police officer with more than 20 years of law enforcement experience, including service as a detective, school resource officer, and a patrol officer. Tony currently serves on Middletown's Common Council, where he participated in the city's decision to approve automated traffic enforcement. So he brings a valuable perspective, both as a former law enforcement officer and as a local elected official who has considered this technology from the policymaking side. So Tony, welcome to Civic Matters.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me.
And also joining us today is State Representative Tom Delnicki. Tom represents Connecticut's 14th General Assembly District in South Windsor. Representative Delnicki has served in the General Assembly since 2017 and brings extensive experience in local government as a former mayor, a deputy mayor, a longtime council member. That combination gives him a valuable perspective on both House state policy, how it's developed, and how those decisions ultimately affect municipalities. So Tom, welcome to Civic Matters.
It's great to be here.
I think we can begin with something that most people agree upon. Everyone wants to see safer roads, and the question is, how do we get there? So before we talk about some of the concerns that surround automated enforcement, let's begin with the problem these cameras are intended to solve. And really, I think that's about road safety. And so, Tony, I'm going to ask you, from a law enforcement perspective, what problem can automated traffic enforcement cameras solve that traditional enforcement sometimes can't?
Well, if it doesn't need the cameras in that area and it reduces speeds, we know that speed is the major cause of fatalities and serious injuries. So if the speeds are reduced, obviously the impact, if there is a crash, then there's more likely a chance of survival or, let's say, the injuries, right? Mm-hmm. So that is something that could happen. Mm-hmm. That if it does reduce the speed, but you are limiting it to that one area. Mm-hmm. But I've heard counter arguments where people might start slamming on brakes and things like that. But that means that they're already speeding and going too fast, mm-hmm. and that's can be reckless.
So for someone who's never really encountered one of these systems, can you briefly walk us through what happens from the moment a violation is captured until the citation is actually issued?
So the cameras pick up all the vehicles, and it registers their speed. And if it meets the speed that they're issuing the ticket as, for example, in Middletown on Route 66 on Washington Street, it's 35 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. At 45, you're issued the automatic ticket. Runs your plate, and then that ticket is automatically processed through the company that is part of that system, and you're mailed that ticket. And the instructions are on there how to pay it. Okay. And that starts at 45 miles an hour.
One response I've heard is, forget the cameras, put more police officers on the road. From your experience, is that really a realistic alternative, or are those really two very different problems?
With the money they got from the cameras, they could probably hire a lot more cops. But it's not really realistic as far as hiring more cops, right? So I know that in Middletown, and when I got there, the old timers would complain we didn't have enough cops, mm-hmm. right? When I retired, we had the same amount of cops, decades later. Yeah. So, and you're busy, and you're not just, you're responding, when you go out there, you're responding to calls, and if you're doing patrol and you're doing stops, that might take you out of service from responding to calls. So you're very limited. You might be lucky on certain days where you have some extra cops working, but that could easily be tied up because now, I gotta tell you, with a lot of the anti-cop stuff that was happening years ago, every call was a two-man call. And it just wasn't safe to really just go alone at it because things can pretty much turn on a dime. And you're not running two-man cars because that's too expensive to have extra people. So I think it would be really cost prohibitive. I'd be for more cops, obviously. It makes it safer for the officers. And I'm coming from that perspective and looking at it from that angle. And it would definitely be helpful to have maybe a dedicated traffic unit. But I tell you, a lot of times when we had that during the day shift, they would be pulled sometimes to back somebody up because of a dangerous situation. So when things get pretty bad or you have a major incident or a robbery, it's all hands on deck and everybody goes to that. So.
Okay. So that brings us to another important distinction. The goal isn't necessarily to issue more tickets. The goal is for safer driving. So let's move from how it works on the street to how Connecticut decided that it's hoping it will work under the law and how it got to authorize this in the first place.
You know, it's interesting. When it got voted in the General Assembly, it passed by a decent margin. I spoke on the floor and I talked about something I saw. And what that was an accident. There was a red light. Somebody slammed their brakes on. Suddenly, bang, right behind the vehicle that slammed the brakes on, another car hit that vehicle. So when you think about it, what is the cost of the cameras? Okay, what is the cost to the public? And how about the innocent guy that was at the stoplight and he slammed his brakes on, okay, didn't break the law, but a vehicle comes behind them and they have a crash. Now you've got a situation where maybe you didn't have to have a police officer out there directing traffic or doing speed enforcement. Now you've got an accident reconstruction team out there, now reconstructing the accident, doing a report, and whatever money you might have saved, the couple of bucks you might have saved, is gone. Now it's interesting because Middletown has really made a big windfall on the red light cameras. I initially thought it was a joke that somebody said to me about Middletown and $2.5 million. And I said, what? 2.5 million?
Was it higher? Was it 3.5?
Well,
I don't remember which one.
I'm being generous
It's a
here
lot.
because
It's a lot.
I know they publicized 2.5. And there was another article where it mentioned 3.5. So the bottom line is millions of dollars being recovered to the town's coffers. Now you've also got the automatic camera, which has got to be downloaded and used as some kind of evidence for the accident reconstruction. And you've got a situation where some poor innocent person slammed their brakes on and got rear-ended, and now they've got to get their car repaired, they've got to go through their insurance company, and they have to go through a police report, and there's a lot of steps there. So at what point is enough enough? And I'll just relive an anecdote of myself. So I'm on a road, not thinking, going too fast, all right? I get pulled over. The officer doesn't know me, it's not in my town. And the gentleman says to me, the officer says, how fast do you think you were going? And I said, I gotta be honest with you, I don't have a clue. And he said, well, you were like 20 over, but you were being honest with me, and I'm not gonna give you a ticket. If you'd said I was doing the speed limit, I probably would have given you a ticket. Honesty is the best policy. So that's an anecdote, but I think it's realistic when you think about the unintended consequences. I know they have cameras, speed cameras for DOT work sites, and that's something different. It's hard to believe that DOT workers die on the job, but it's true. And there have been accidents where a driver would be going too fast, they would careen off the road, and they would kill someone that was actually just doing their job. So you've got to take it from a balance, and you've got to look at it carefully. Yes, red light cameras will generate revenue and maybe allow an officer to do more patrolling, directed patrolling, handle other instances. But if you have an accident that occurs as a part of a red light camera, at what point have you lost any savings? And for the record, I voted against it. I voted against the red light camera. I didn't like it only from the standpoint of what I'd actually experienced. And I told a number of my colleagues that.
Did you experience that accident with the red light camera or speed camera?
It was a red light
Red light
camera. Yeah, it was in another state.
Because we're looking at doing that, what a chief is. I voted no for the speed cameras at first because I had some issues with how it was going to work logistically, and I had questions like you had as well with the stop and discretion and all that, and especially with you don't know who the driver is, right? It's always the registered owner that gets the ticket, not the driver. So to me, it doesn't seem right that the person that maybe wasn't driving is getting the ticket, as opposed to the person who actually committed the action. So. But your points are really well taken, and but you also look at different. So coming from the investigative part of that, it's not always a traffic officer. Patrol always handles accidents as well. I know in Middletown, I handled a lot of accidents in that district, 2, 3, 4 car accidents coming down that hill, especially in the winter or bad conditions. And then there's different types of reasoning, whether you're following too close, there's contributing factors. Following too close, maybe you might find mechanical problems with the car, maybe the guy's brake lights weren't working. Had all these incidents where people, they hit the guy from behind, and he's like, I didn't know he was stopping, and you come to find out the guy had no brake lights. So it could be a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
But to your point, that can be one of the contributing factors. A lot of it's always human error more than anything else, but I can see people, freaking out, not wanting to get that ticket and slam on their brakes, or they're already speeding now, right? So then what do we do? Add a speeding camera and the red light so that you have both going the same? I mean, it's kind of nutty, but.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the deterrence component to this, because, we want, I would think, to be mindful of the need to incentivize people to slow down, right? And so typically if an officer were to pull someone over and they were to get a ticket, and they were found guilty of actually, committing that infraction, that penalty, there would be a monetary fine, there would be some type of administrative DMV points on their license, and that likely report it to their insurance. But the state legislature doesn't seem to have a deterrence component worked into this. Where is the deterrence?
The deterrence is what you actually talked about. The person that's driving too fast and he gets pulled over. The other interesting nuance, though, is, I don't know if you're familiar with the speed monitors that would click into your data center in your vehicle. And they actually record the speeds that you're going. And I know in my case, my insurance agent said, they're optional. Okay. And if you accept it and you are a great driver, you're going to get a substantial decrease. But if you accept it and you're speeding and you get caught, or no, actually, let me rephrase that. You don't get caught by an officer or a speed camera. You get caught by your own vehicle and the data acquisition inside your vehicle. Because many a time, they use that in accident reconstruction, the data that was actually in there when the accident occurred.
Yes, I've been
So
part of that before.
it's like double jeopardy.
Yeah.
Unlike if I was in the same situation, and I said, look, I didn't know how fast I was going. I'm trying to get home. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry for what I did. And the officer said, mind your business, just go ahead and drive home safely. And if I ever see you on this road and you're ever breaking the speed limit, you will get a ticket.
I do like the old school ways of doing that, and that's kind of like community policing. And there have been incidents where cops have stopped, people for a minor violation or a speeding ticket. And I'll give you one case in East Hartford, when that police officer was killed he was shot and killed in an incident. The information to his killer was found from a traffic stop, and the person said, "Hey, I know some information here." So the old school way of doing things, I do see the value in that. I haven't talked to any guys about it, but I would think nowadays, with a lot of the anti-cop stuff and people that do argue with you when you stop them and say, "I was doing the speed limit," when they were obviously doing maybe double, constantly, being combative with the police officer, whether it's just verbally or even physically sometimes. The incentives to stop cars is diminishing, because at the end of the day, we're all human, and you can only get beat up so much during a day. And that's, I think officers are like, well, the cameras are doing it, I can go worry about my calls and going to domestics or robberies or thefts and disturbances and things like that, or walk that beat more. So there's a lot of little nuances with all the reasoning behind it. I just think that if we're going to have technology, we should enter factors that are more realistic. I think it looks too much like it's just to make money. Instead of doing things like I mentioned earlier when we were talking, we're going to have a gradual scale, because if the speed limit is 35 and you get a ticket at 45, but if you're doing 80 or 82 and being reckless, are you getting the same fine? And also, I know that there was issues with from my public safety meetings. The Police Chiefs Association came out and said, they really weren't too much liking the way it had no teeth, which basically you could say it's going to be sent to collections, but if you don't go to collections and it doesn't go against your credit score or points, there's really nothing. So what really happens? Does it then end up the people that only live in Middletown or in the town with the cameras that can be held accountable because it might go against their taxes, or they don't pay it, they can repossess their house? I mean, how is it going to work? But if you're from Pennsylvania or somewhere else, you could say, too bad, I'm not paying it. So there's really no, it's good people getting tickets and being honest enough to pay it, basically.
It's ironically, you talked about that and being out of state. I got caught speeding.
So you're human.
In Pennsylvania. And the first thing we did when we pulled over was, I said, make sure that you got the tonneau cover in the back open, okay? And Audrey's first comment was, why? So the officer knows we're not up to anything, and I'm going to turn the lights on in here, and you keep your hands in plain sight. So the officer comes over, and he said, you were doing such and such a speed limit, and about 20 over what it should have been, and he says, I came walking over here, and you had the lights on inside the vehicle. You had your hands out in plain sight, and it was not a threat or a reason for me to be upset about it from the standpoint of something could happen. Because how many times do police officers do random stops for speeding, and they get into a situation where it turns out that the individual that was speeding was a bad guy, and the bad guy does something.
I've had that happen.
And the officer gets hurt.
Yeah.
So that was a case where it went from being a speeding ticket to failure to obey a sign.
So I did the same thing once. I was actually traveling with my whole family. So it was 3 kids in the back. My daughter was in a car seat still. She was getting car sick. We've been driving for several hours, going to Virginia to visit my brother-in-law. It was late at night. It was after midnight. It was almost 1 in the morning. We were just finally getting there. And back in those days, it was old GPS Garmin ones. And it wasn't showing me that the bridge was out. So when I went to slow down to the exit, I'm like, oh crap. So I slowed down and I kind of gunned it and sped up again. And the trooper pulled out. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm like, well, at least he'll tell us where to go, because I don't know how to get where I'm going. So I pulled over pretty far to make it safe. Did the whole thing with the lights, rolled down all my windows.
Yep.
And he's explained the whole thing, and I said, listen, I'm a cop too. If you gotta give me a ticket, do what you gotta do. I know you gotta, report to other people too. And he's like, you're a cop? He's like, where? And I told him, and he's like, okay. And he's like, yeah, I saw what you did. He goes, no one does that for me. I'm like, well, I said, I work midnights too, actually. And he let me go with a verbal, and before he left, I'm like, hey, wait. He was like, what? Because you're all set. I go, no, I don't know where I'm going. So he finally helped me out, and he started laughing. And my brother-in-law was a firefighter in that area too, so yeah, I mean, we're all human. We all make mistakes, and I think those are good experiences. It's unfortunate now people would get so crazy on car stops, and maybe that's something the legislature should put in. That people got to learn how to get pulled over, so they learn how to,
Pulling over training.
yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to give you your insurance or your registration, your license until you, or call your supervisor. It's like, this could have been a verbal warning if you just had not been a jerk.
Are there, did the lawmakers consider whether there are any escalating consequences if you get repeat tickets?
During that entire discussion on the floor, I don't recall representatives talking about the unintended consequence of what happens to my insurance rates if I do get caught and I can't easily contest a speed camera that takes a picture, and it becomes very difficult to try to contest it. And I have another interesting story, and it's in the city of Hartford. A friend of mine, he had a license plate on his vehicle, and it was just a regular passenger vehicle. And it had exactly the same numbers and letters as a non-passenger vehicle that was a commercial vehicle. And he got the ticket, and he tried to contest it. And he called me and he said, Tom, I wasn't speeding. It was written out because they actually had a picture of it, as a commercial plate when it's a passenger plate. And no one wanted to listen to me, and I actually called the mayor of Hartford. And I said, here's what's going on. I said, before I call Channel 3 or Channel 30 to bring somebody out here and make this a stink, you might want to take a look at this, and you might want to see what happened, and you might want to get this taken off the books.
It happened to my uncle. It just happened.
No, this happened about 5 years ago.
Well, this was just recently in Middletown. My uncle got a ticket. He has his name on his plate.
Oh, jeez.
So he has a passenger plate on a Acura. It was a same name, but it was on a commercial plate that claimed came back to a truck. But they sent it to him. And the pictures of it, he's like, this is not me. so I guess we have a number you can call to explain the whole thing. But so that just recently happened in Middletown. Similar situation. I saw one, it's kind of funny. Remember Knight Rider?
Yeah.
Somebody got a ticket with the fake Knight Rider plate, but the actual car that has the real car registered in California for Knight got the ticket at the museum the car's in. But the car went through like in Pennsylvania or something like that. And they got the ticket in the museum in California. So, I mean, there's also these ways to get around it. I've seen it like on social media. You could buy these plates that flip or black out. They black out on it. A lot of motorcycles have that as well. When they run from police, they can black out their plates. So it's a cheap, $50, cheaper than a ticket, right? So whenever you're going through it, you just hit that button. And I asked that question actually on the floor during the council meeting, and they said, no, we can't see through that.
So when you were evaluating, what type of data were you looking at?
We didn't have much data in the beginning, so now, just last night we had a public safety meeting, and the police chief gave a 12-month report. We're gonna do another one at 18 months.
Okay.
He pretty much said that, so it is a pretty steep decline, that we've shown that the speed has reduced dramatically.
Okay.
It's been a complete shift, like 80% speeding and 20% weren't. Now it's 20% that it's the opposite now, so it's just amazing. So that's good, but still a lot of tickets are being written. It's people know more now, and after they get their first ticket, they tend to. I know I slow way down. It's kind of funny because the speed limit's 40 on 66 in Middlefield, and then drops to 35 as soon as you hit the line. So that's a little kind of, to me, 35 on Route 66, a 4-lane, basically highway,
It's
at
a fast
35,
road, yeah.
when I can be on Route 17 in South Main Street, Middletown, Durham border, and it's 45 on a 2-lane road. So maybe we need to reevaluate how we assess the speeds on the roads, because those speed limits have been in place for maybe 100 years, maybe,
Right.
and it's back to when cars didn't have any type of safety measures on it at all.
Was that part of, well, probably that particular question wasn't, but part of your due diligence before the council approved it? What were they looking at then? Were they looking at other traffic mitigation?
There were a lot of accidents. So I could tell you, I responded to a lot of accidents on 66 in that area. That was really why I was like, well, no, I have responded to fatals on that road myself personally. I did not respond to a fatal there, but I know that there were
Yeah.
on 66, not generally in that area.
Yeah.
But coming down that hill where you're approaching like that Home Depot Plaza, the Camp Street area, and there's an apartment complex, there's people coming in and out of there. So a lot of accidents would happen from cars coming down too fast and then pulling out onto that road. So they did give us some numbers on that, and I believed it because I experienced it. I didn't have any questions with it. So, and there were some fatals that were in other areas that they're looking to maybe add cameras there as well. But
If you could give residents who are in communities that are thinking about implementing this or just starting to explore it, if you could give them, one question to ask, what might that be? I'll ask both of you.
that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Based on what you went through while you were sitting through the process and kind of based on what you know from the lawmaking perspective.
So if I was doing a town hall and we were talking about red lights and stopping and speeding, et cetera, and red light cameras came up, I should say, I would say first thing, talk to your senators, because I'm a representative,
Yeah.
and I have a problem with the red lights cameras, and I don't like them, because you take the human aspect out, and that you should talk to your representative, your senator, and say, hey, I don't like this, and here's why. Don't just say, I don't want it. Tell them why. This is a situation, if there was a mitigating circumstance, you would be able to actually talk to the officer as opposed to talk to the photograph. How's that for an answer?
No, it makes sense because I think you were talking about earlier that or perhaps even before the show, that the ticket goes to the registered car owner and that can be problematic. So it really is a balancing act because it sounds like it's doing its job in Middletown. It sounds like, speeding is down, at least on some of those roads. And people are more cognizant of their speed at least. But then you have concerns about, is this just another way for municipalities to earn revenue, particularly as municipalities are strapped. And so that sort of becomes a controversial topic. And how do you balance those?
Yep, 3.5 million.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute.
We had people come to, they came to the council meeting and spoke when we were putting it through, and there were good questions that people asked about, well, are people gonna start going through the back roads now and making my residential area busier?
Oh, that's a concern.
So that question came up last night where they said, well, it's still about 700,000 cars. So it hasn't reduced traffic on that street. It's still about 700,000 a week. So we're not really sure if people are avoiding it. I know that people are, personally. So unless I have to go on that way, I usually don't anyway. But that's one question. I think, like you mentioned, was talking about, I don't like that. It's the registered owner getting that ticket no matter who's driving. If they're driving it, fine. But if they're not, I guess you can contest it, but I think the law is pretty much tough, like you're gonna get the ticket. I mean, so otherwise that person has to just pay you back the money and say, oh, I'm sorry, I drove your car too fast down the road. Then there was become you gotta sue them in civil court and say, well, I wasn't driving it and that's gonna cost you more than the ticket. So it's really not, how are you gonna do that? You wouldn't wanna, I wouldn't wanna file.
It goes to the old adage, do you really want to loan your car out to somebody?
Well, my kids, right, I have 3 kids, they all drive cars registered to us right now.
Yep.
all, so it's not, if they mess up, then maybe I still have some saying what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
because he's, only 16, 17, but, so, I mean, that's a different story. But at the same time, they're not getting that experience, maybe getting pulled over and learning their lesson either, so.
And I will also go back to the concept of the DOT worker and how I do support the automated speed camera, because a DOT worker could actually get killed on the job. Same thing has happened with police officers.
Yeah,
That's
is there?
State trooper.
Does the state have anything, so I know in Middletown, we have it, ordinance, to basically have to have a police officer at construction sites, whether it's on a small road, big roads, we have to have officers there. Does the state have the same type of mandated requirement that a state trooper has to be on these highways with the construction crews?
They've actually put some leeway on that. So with the automated
Flaggers
camera and the DOT workers, there is that level of protection. And it so far has worked out well, because I know the state police were not very happy with the concept of it initially, but they're at the point where there really isn't adequate staffing on Connecticut State Police.
Yeah,
To be able to have that leeway, the ability to have them, the officers at a construction site. But I've also seen in some of the more dangerous areas, yes, there is a patrol car there, there's an officer, sometimes two, to make sure. Because again, as you indicated pertaining to the speeds that people are traveling, it's unbelievable from what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And it's not, basic cars nowadays, you could be doing 70, 80 and I don't really feel
You
it.
don't even know it.
Yeah, so that's not something that's unheard of. I think having a cop there is just, for me, it's also a good deterrent. The lights, you can see from a distance. But if you do have someone that's impaired or has an issue or something does happen, you have an immediate response. There has been troopers and officers killed from being hit as well, but if something were to happen, you have an instant communication to get more help there, whether it's an ambulance or anything else. So that's why I'm for it.
And I'll make another observation. I've had people ask me many a time, oh, why the heck is there a big DOT truck and another one? And there's the third one, they're actually doing the work. And I say, the first truck is with some individual who's going crazy and driving like a nut. And it's better that that individual hits the truck. Same thing with the second truck. By the third truck, where they're actually working, that's the point at which you don't have to worry, because you would have had the unintended consequences prior. And when I had the explanation and workers told me all about it, it was one of the best conversations I had, because I had looked at, folks working on the highway, and I said to myself, why in the world would you have 3 trucks for a 1-truck job? And it was all about safety, and safety is key and critical.
Yeah.
You want that each person that's working on that crew coming home safe and sound.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I thank you both for your perspectives. It's very much appreciated. And is there anything that, you may want to add that we didn't touch upon, or do you see any changes coming to the existing law?
I think right now, the red light camera issue, it depends now. With this whole deal down in Middletown, with the millions of dollars that they've collected, I have a feeling at some point there's going to be enough pushback on that where something's going to be amended.
Yeah, you just jogged my memory. Right? So basically what the law says is that the money has to go towards like road repairs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, that means it goes towards our public works department. So if it goes towards our public works department, and that allows them to buy trucks to fix the roads or equipment to fix the roads. So does that mean we can, with all that money, now fund that budget line less and redirect that money that's already aligned to another agency, perhaps? Because to me, it seems like now it becomes like, I hate to think like a cop, but now that's like a money laundering scheme where you're just moving money around. Now we've got all this money to help this one thing, but really it would take that and just move into another line, and we're gonna play that whole shifting stuff around. And I don't like not being honest with the public. I think the money should be able to use where it's needed. Maybe we need more cops for that. Maybe we need more police cars. Maybe we should reduce people's taxes from it, because that's a lot of the stuff that my constituents talk about, saying, you're making all this money, but my taxes are excessive in this town, and they're moving out. So maybe it should be used where it's mostly needed, and to help people that need to have their, there's a lot of elderly people that have reached out to me during the last budget cycle, and I was able to come up with a flat, no raise budget. But,
Congratulations.
But the majority passed their budget and didn't even consider mine with the facts that I provided. And publicly said, well, sorry, taxes are going up. And I think that's just wrong, because that's just, elderly people that have been in their house forever that were literally crying to me saying, my dad built this house. I moved in when he passed away. I'm 80-something years old, and I can't afford the taxes because they were $6,000 when I moved in. And here I am, 17, 18 years later, and now it's $14,000 a year. That's just, how can, they're retired and on a budget, how can they stay? So all this money that's coming in, it kind of seems like it's going to be used in how they want it to be used. So some bigger talking points here, besides even the safety, because at the end of the day, I guess everything comes down to the money and how we're going to really appropriate the proper use for it. And what is that proper use?
It'll be an interesting discussion with the Board of Common Council or the town, town folks, with the town council, I should say. That's where the discussion will probably occur, because if you've already got the cameras in there, or if you are going to get cameras like they do in Middletown, then you'd have that extra revenue, and what are you going to do with the extra revenue? Is it going to go to senior tax abatement of some nature or tax reduction in some nature? Is it going to go to the school system? So that's the bigger question about that whole issue.
So I guess my question to you is that something that can be legislated on your side? Or it's like, what I'm saying is like,
Well, the state put restrictions on
yeah,
where
like,
it can
so
go.
if say the,
They could say that,
percentage-wise, saying once you get to a certain percent of money, like if it exceeds over this amount, then a certain percentage should go to the roads, but you can now use this extra
In the general budget.
to help reduce taxes or help to add public safety. And we talk about public safety, right? Also about safety. How about really helping public safety? Like I mentioned earlier, same amount of officers in the town for over 20 years because they wanted to keep taxes down, right? So they wouldn't fund public safety. But now we have these cameras generating money from the taxpayers instead of going back to actually help them.
it's an interesting thing when you talk about revenues like that. Is the money going to go into the reserves? Is the money going to go into the budget and basically disappear? And how it will get utilized?
I think I just said the quiet part out loud.
You did.
That's
So we're going to talk about flat cameras another time.
Sure.
But following the news, there's a lot of concern without talking about them, with privacy. And so very quickly, do you perceive privacy concerns with these particular red light speed detection cameras?
Well, if we're talking the red light cameras and speed detection, that's one thing. If we're talking the plate readers and that's all they do, if there's a bad guy and you're trying to find and locate where they are, I could understand that. I would see that as a reason why you would want to have that. There's a lot of concerns also, and the town of Windsor actually went through a situation where they got rid of them because there was a public outcry, and they were saying it was an invasive, it was some way to trap residents, etc. And they no longer have those cameras in Windsor. So that's something to think about. And then, of course, the governor stepping in, wanting to have POAC post to look at the issue, to make some judgments, and to get some direction. And I think it was today, the AI caucus in the legislature actually supports stepping back on those cameras and AI being utilized for speed like that. So
It's
there's things
interesting.
going on.
It's interesting. It's a,
We definitely have to have people that are experts in data and all these, computer science and AI with it. Post would probably just give an opinion on the law enforcement side of it. You definitely need that as well. I know when we talked about all these cameras and whether it's the flock and the data, we had our city attorney come up with a deal that addressed all the concerns that the public had at the first meeting. And at the second meeting, they just said, well, we don't trust flock. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media and the stuff. And these things have happened. They definitely have to be looked at to make sure that the data can be protected. We were told last night that FOIA laws are gonna be, I think with these, so if I want to like do an FOIA complaint and get my information, I could, but I can't get it for like you. So the information, it can't just be shared off of the system. So those are things we need in place to protect people. We have to earn the public trust so that
Right.
these, but then also having these contracts that if they don't abide by it, there's some serious consequences with that too.
I believe I read something today, actually, where they were considering, and maybe they had already made a determination, and I'm talking about flock with respect to how long they retain the information, and I think limiting it to maybe like 7 days.
Yes.
So
I think the chief
they're
mentioned
really
that last night.
really considering.
It would be totally deleted or expunged. But we also need to have a record of that, right? You need like a chain of evidence to show
Yes.
that it was definitely disposed of correctly.
Yeah.
When I was an evidence officer, that was a chain of custody was a huge thing. We had to make sure that from the beginning to the end, when that case was done, and I got that court order back, to prove that I destroyed it. So, you have to have that proof. And that's something that they actually had that as well. So it's a ton of stuff we can do. We just have to have, I think, the right people in the room that understand the nuances of everything. And that's a good start.
And I think that's a great place to end, because it's about having conversations like we had here today, and that's where you start. And
Without a doubt,
yeah,
because we've got a legislative session coming up in January, the long session. And I know, as I say, the governor's asked Post to take a look at how they're being utilized, the flock cameras. And interestingly enough, the ACLU is getting involved now also.
okay.
So they've put a flag in the ground on this issue.
I think we definitely want to protect people's rights. I'm not against that. But experience matters, perspective matters, the truth matters, and that has to be shared. And it can't come from a combative nature in the discussion. It has to be like, hey, this is my experience.
Yeah.
What's yours? And those truths matter. And we have to come to a middle ground and make it work. That's what we're elected to do, no matter how hard it is. And sometimes it's having those tough conversations with people that really are angry and don't want to understand. I guess that's from, being a police officer, that's what I dealt with every single time I had to go on a call, and it was to get the understanding of the situation, get the perspective, get the truth out, and then go from there. And that's how you solve the problems. So that's what needs to be done here, but we gotta have these tough conversations. Shows like this are great to get people, educated on it, and more
So
needs to happen.
I think you will see something
Okay.
Definitely.
come out of the legislative session coming up.
Okay.
Because of course, as I say, the governor and Post and ACLU are all involved now.
Okay.
And I don't know how many other organizations will actually get involved.
This
And-
was the reason why I voted no to begin with, because I knew we would end up in the situation they're at right now with all these questions. And we had so many more questions, but it was just like, it felt so rushed, so pressured to do it, all in the name of safety. And it was like, well, why are we rushing this? Can't we wait another few months or 6 months but we're learning now on the fly, and I guess it's better than nothing. So.
Well, I thank you both very much, Representative Delnicki.
It was a lot of fun.
Councilman,
Thank you.
thank you so much. And so I think today's conversation demonstrates why issues like this rarely have a simple yes or no answer, because we all want safer roads, and the harder questions are which tools work, what safeguards they require, whether they actually change behavior, and how we measure success. So as your community considers automated traffic enforcement, here are 4 questions worth asking. What problem are we trying to solve? What evidence tells us this is the right tool? What safeguards should be in place? And how will we know whether it's working? You may ultimately support these cameras, you may oppose them, but understanding the issue gives all of us a better foundation from which to make that judgment. And there's another kind of camera generating considerable conversations across Connecticut right now, automated license plate readers. They serve a very different purpose, they collect different information, and raise a different set of questions about public safety, technology, and privacy. And that's our next conversation. I'm Lisa Marotta. Thank you for joining us for Civic Matters, Understanding Local Government and Strengthening Communities.